Welcome to the next video. This is going to be talking about different kinds of life forms, and we're going to start on this presentation, this little lecture, talking about micro or small microscopic organisms. And I think at this point we will have discussed this, but there are three different main big groups that living things are put into, and they're called domains. And two of the domains are related just specifically for all the bacteria that exist. And one of them is called the eubacteria group, and I'll show you the other one in a second. But let's get started by this one, and we're going to talk about eubacteria first. And I'm going to put this about right here, and let's get this going. Let's see how if we can make this go quick. So eubacteria is one of the domains. Again, there are three domains, and the eubacteria are bacteria. And the reason they're called eubacteria is because they're more modern, and there's actually an ancient form of bacteria that we believe are the first living things, and they're called archaebacteria. Archae like archaeology. And I'll show you that on a diagram on how to spell that in a second. But let's just look at a general bacteria first. Bacteria are really, small but complex, but the important thing is that both the archaebacteria and the eubacteria, both of them are prokaryotic, no nucleus. So the DNA is in the middle there of the cell, but it's kind of scattered and it's not in its own compartment. They're all one-celled, and most of them have to move to nutrients, and actually a lot of them are producers, so they actually make their own food. Now, they move with this whip tail at the back here that's called a flagella, and these little yellow things sticking out all over the sides are actually called pili, which are reproductive structures that help the organism reproduce with another one, almost like a sexual organ. I want to remind you that the theory of evolution would say that at some point we were all one ancestor, one cell, if you will, and that over thousands and millions of years we branched off into three main groups. And this is where I told you I'd tell you how to spell it. But the worst group are called the U, or sometimes they're just called the regular bacteria group. This is an ancient form of bacteria. You can see it branches off a little quicker right here than this one. This one goes a little longer before it branches. And they're called the archaea or archaeabacteria. And then the domain that we're in is called the eukaryotic domain, the eukarya, and that means we have a nucleus. So these two do not have a nucleus, and eukarya do. And when you look at the different kingdoms that we've discussed, animals, fungi, plants, and protists are all over here with the eukarya. Bacteria are the two domains here. And they reproduce asexually by splitting. That's called binary. Bi means two, and fission means to split. They also use those pili that I just showed you to reproduce as well. And they have those tails called flagellum to help them move. Some examples are here for you, some different case studies of sicknesses that have been transmitted by bacteria from rodents, biting other animals or biting another animal, and some are carried actually by insects too. Like fleas can carry a lot of bacteria, and they bite the rodents, and then the rodents get it. So these are important environmentally in terms of a food chain and a food web and things like that. And there are three shapes for bacteria. One are called rod-shaped, and they're the hot dog looking ones right about here. Second group are called cocci, or the round-shaped bacteria, COCCI. And then these are the spiral group, or what we call sporili. And they're just classified based on their look, and it helps classify and put them into groups. Some, as I mentioned, are parasitic, so that means that they cause diseases. Some are actually harmful, or helpful, too. So please don't think they're all bad. Some of the new strands we find can help us make beer, help us make bread, help us make yogurt from milk, make cheeses. So and some are in our bodies right now helping us break up our food. So they're not all bad. They're not all parasites. And some of these new strands have been able to withstand medication, and so they've reproduced, and there's some variation of them that has a mutation that allows them to resist a certain drug. So you get a whole new group of bacteria that are resistant to a certain drug that used to work to kill it. Same thing's true with food poisoning. The bacteria makes gets a little deal out of it and starts eating some of the food, and he gets a lot out of it, except that you then can get food poisoning from it. So both of those are examples of how new strands can develop in foods or to drugs. And I've mentioned this before, but bacteria have a really big role in the food chain. They help decompose dead stuff down back into the environment. They help fix nitrogen, make it ammonia, and then we talked about denitrification, where you're making it into nitrates. and back into ammonia gas, or back into nitrogen gas. And then, as I mentioned, some of them can be parasites, and that's also very important in the food chain because those will affect the animals that are eating each other if they have some kind of disease. And then I want to talk real quickly about another microorganism that's actually not in the bacteria domains. It's not in the eubacteria domain, and it's not in the archaebacteria domain. It's in the domain that's called eukaryote. It's actually in the same domain that we are in, and they're called protists. And the reason they're in this domain is that even though they might look like bacteria because they're very microscopically small, but they're eukaryotic. They have a nucleus in their cells. And unlike the bacteria, these guys, some have species that are multicellular. And a lot of these guys, along with bacteria, have a cell wall to help protect them better because they don't have bones and they're not even many-celled, some of them. So they have cell walls around their cells. Helps for protection. And last but not least, whereas most bacteria are producers, just like plants, make their own food, protists tend to be, if they're unicellular especially, they tend to be consumers. There's actually only one group of protists that actually do photosynthesis. The rest are consumers. I think it'd almost be the opposite with bacteria. Most of them are producers and some are consumers. And the significance of them in evolution is simply that they are single-celled, but they're considered to be a higher form complex of life because of the nucleus, and so they're considered the highest form of single-celled life. And those are called protists. And we're going to be discussing those a little bit more later. But for now, I think that does a good job, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Have a good one.